Have you ever wondered what it would be like to forget everything about yourself, only to discover that your past holds secrets that could destroy the people you've come to love? Today's story will take you on an emotional journey through the streets of New York, where a homeless man's simple act of kindness sets off a chain of events that will reveal shocking truths about identity, family, and the incredible power of human connection. David Chen has been living in the shadows of Times Square for over 2 years, with no memory of the successful psychiatrist he once was. But when he writes a note to return a lost wallet, his handwriting becomes the key that unlocks a dangerous past and puts everyone he cares about in mortal danger. This is a story about finding home in the most unexpected places, about families that choose each other, and about the courage it takes to fight for the people you love, even when you can't remember why they matter so much. Before we begin this incredible journey, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. If you believe that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters, drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had a moment that completely changed how you see yourself? Let's dive into David's extraordinary story. Some memories return like screams. Homeless man's note reveals shocking truth about his past. The fluorescent lights of Times Square subway station hummed their eternal lullaby at 3:17 a.m., casting harsh shadows across the cracked tiles where David Chen sat with his back against the cold wall. His hands trembled as he gripped the pen, not from the November chill that seeped through the underground tunnels, but from something deeper, something that had been clawing at the edges of his consciousness for weeks. Some memories return like whispers he wrote on the back of a discarded coffee cup, others like screams. David stared at the words, his chest tightening with an inexplicable dread. He didn't know why he'd written them or why they felt so familiar on his tongue. For 2 years, 4 months, and 13 days, he lived in this concrete maze beneath New York City, and still his past remained locked behind a wall of silence his mind refused to breach. The pen felt wrong in his fingers, too natural, too practiced. A distant rumble announced the approach of the first train of the morning, the 3:47 express that would carry early shift workers and insomniacs deeper into the city's heart. David folded the coffee cup carefully and tucked it into his coat pocket next to the brown leather wallet he'd found 12 hours earlier. Dr. James Martinez, according to the medical license tucked behind faded credit cards. The wallet's owner looked tired in his photo, the kind of exhaustion that lived behind the eyes rather than on the surface. David had spent the night studying the contents, trying to understand why a stranger's pain felt so familiar. There was something about the prescription bottle that made his hands shake. Sertraline 50 mg, take one daily for depression. The orange plastic rattled like dice when he moved a sound that triggered flashes of memory too quick to grasp. White walls, soft voices, the weight of responsibility. He couldn't name. Why do I know what this is for? David pulled out a piece of clean paper, notebook paper he'd salvaged from a Columbia University dumpster, and began to write. The words flowed like water through a broken dam, each sentence more confident than the last. Dr. Martinez, you don't know me, but I found your wallet near the Metro card machines yesterday evening. Everything is here, your cash cards and that photo of your family that you keep looking at when you think no one's watching. I noticed your prescription, and I wanted you to know something important. Depression lies to us about our worth, about our future, about the impact we have on the people who love us. It whispers that we're burdens when we're actually blessings, that we're broken when we're just human. Your children look at you in that photo like you hung the stars in the sky. That's not the look children give to someone who's failing them. That's the look they give to their hero, even when their hero is struggling to save himself. The medication helps, but so does remembering that healing isn't linear. Some days will feel like moving backward, and that's not failure. That's just part of the journey forward. You're a doctor, so you understand the body's ability to heal. Trust that your mind has the same resilience. The world needs healers, Dr. Martinez, especially healers who remember what it feels like to need healing. Take care of yourself. You matter more than you know. A friend who understands David read the note 3 times each reading, bringing a deeper sense of unease. The words were his, but they came from a place he couldn't access. Medical terminology flowed from his pen like a native language. Psychological insights arrived fully formed in his mind. Who was I before this? The question had haunted him since he'd awakened in Bellevue Hospital 28 months ago, his skull fractured, and his memory wiped clean. The doctors had said the amnesia might be temporary, but temporary had stretched into seasons into years. Eventually, the social workers had given up trying to place him, and he'd slipped through the cracks of the system, becoming just another ghost in the city's underground. But ghosts didn't know how to comfort strangers about their depression. Ghosts didn't write with the clinical precision of someone who'd spent years studying the human mind. The approaching train's headlight swept across the platform, illuminating a figure huddled on one of the benches. David's attention sharpened as he recognized the small silhouette, a child alone at nearly 4 a.m., clutching a backpack against her chest like armor. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to help. David approached slowly, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. As he drew closer, he could see that the girl was maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a private school uniform that marked her as someone who didn't belong in this place at this hour. Tears tracked down her brown cheeks, and her dark hair had come loose from its ponytail. "Hey there," David said softly, settling onto the far end of the bench. "You waiting for someone?" The girl looked up, startled. Her eyes were red-rimmed but alert, intelligent. There was something about her posture, the way she held herself with dignity despite her fear, that reminded David of someone he couldn't place. "My mom," she whispered. "She was supposed to pick me up from my friend's house, but her meeting ran really late. She said to take the subway home, but—" Her voice trailed off as fresh tears started. "But it's scary down here at night," David finished gently. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Lily Martinez." David's chest tightened. Martinez, the same last name as the wallet's owner. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. "That's a beautiful name. I'm David." He smiled, and for a moment the harsh fluorescent lights seemed warmer. "Tell me, Lily, what's your favorite thing to do when you're not sitting in scary subway stations?" "I paint," she said, some of her wariness fading. "I'm working on a picture of a purple elephant. My art teacher says elephants aren't purple, but I think they should be." "Why purple?" "Because purple is the color of dreams, and elephants never forget their dreams. They never forget anything important." The words hit David like a physical blow. Elephants never forget. The irony was so sharp it took his breath away. "That's very wise," he managed. "What else do you know about elephants?" "They have families that stick together no matter what happens. When one elephant is hurt or lost, the whole herd helps take care of it. They don't leave anyone behind, even when it would be easier." David felt something crack open in his chest, not painful but profound, like ice breaking up after a long winter. "That sounds like a good way to live." "Do you have a family, David?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications he couldn't fully grasp. David was quiet for a long moment, studying his hands. Hands that felt familiar, gripping a pen, hands that seemed to know how to comfort a frightened child. "I don't remember," he said finally. "I had an accident a while back, and now most of my past is gone. But I like to think that if I did have a family, they were like your elephants." Lily studied his face with the directness that only children possess. "Maybe we could be your elephant family. Just for today." Before David could respond, the sharp click of heels on concrete announced someone's rapid approach. A woman in an expensive business suit was hurrying down the platform, her phone pressed to her ear, scanning the benches with increasing desperation. "Yes, I know I'm impossibly late," she was saying into the phone. "The Peterson case is falling apart faster than we can contain it, and I couldn't leave until we had a strategy. The other side has documentation we weren't expecting, and if we can't prove it's fabricated—" She stopped mid-sentence as she spotted her daughter sitting next to a homeless man. David recognized the look that crossed Sofia Martinez's face. The same protective terror he'd seen countless times in places he couldn't quite remember. Every maternal instinct was firing at once, preparing for battle. "Lily, Mom!" Both child and man looked up. Lily's face immediately shifted from contentment to guilt, while David simply stood and took a respectful step back, his hands visible and non-threatening. "Mom, this is David. He was telling me about elephant families and—" "Get your things now." Sophia's voice was controlled but firm. She moved between her daughter and David, her designer handbag positioned like a shield. "We're leaving." David raised his hands slightly, a gesture of peace. The movement felt automatic, practiced. "Ma'am," she was frightened, waiting alone. "I just wanted to make sure she was safe until you arrived." Sophia studied his face, taking in details that didn't quite match her preconceptions. Despite his rough appearance, his voice was educated, cultured. His posture suggested someone accustomed to being listened to, respected. But 8 years of practicing family law had taught her to trust her instincts above all else. "Thank you for your concern," she said stiffly, taking Lily's hand. "But we're fine." As they walked toward the exit, Lily looked back over her shoulder. "Bye, David. Thank you for being my elephant family today." David waved, watching them disappear up the stairs. For a few precious minutes, he'd felt like himself, whoever that was supposed to be. But as the platform filled with the early morning commuters, David Chen faded back into invisibility, just another ghost in the city's vast machine. What he didn't know was that 20 minutes later, Sofia Martinez would sit in her car outside their apartment building, staring at her daughter in the rearview mirror. "Mom," Lily's voice was small. "Was it wrong to talk to David?" "No, baby, but it's not safe to talk to strangers, especially when you're alone." But he didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like someone who used to take care of people. Someone who knew exactly what to say to make me feel better. Sophia's grip tightened on the steering wheel. There had been something about the homeless man's manner. The way he'd spoken to Lily with such intuitive understanding, the careful precision of his speech, even in rough circumstances. "What did you two talk about? Elephant families? And purple elephants that never forget their dreams? And how some people have accidents that make them forget who they used to be, but that doesn't mean they stop being good people inside." That night, as Sophia tucked Lily into bed, she couldn't shake the image of the man in the subway station. Something about his eyes had seemed familiar, though she was certain they'd never met. There had been a gentleness there, a depth of understanding that spoke of professional training. "Mom," Lily said sleepily, "can we bring David a sandwich tomorrow? I want to be his elephant family too." Sophia's first instinct was to say no, but looking at her daughter's face, more peaceful than it had been in weeks, she found herself nodding. "We'll see, baby. We'll see." Meanwhile, 4 miles downtown, Dr. James Martinez stood in the 14th Precinct Police Station holding his wallet with trembling hands. Officer Sarah Chen, no relation to David, just one of those New York coincidences, had called him 20 minutes ago to report that his wallet had been found. "Everything appears to be here, Dr. Officer Chen said, checking off items on her form. "Cash cards identification. And there was this." She handed him the folded note David had written. Dr. Martinez read it once, then again, his expression shifting from gratitude to confusion to something approaching shock. "Officer, I need to ask you something, and I know it's going to sound strange." His voice was barely above a whisper. "The person who wrote this note, can you describe them?" "Homeless gentleman, been around the station for a couple years. Goes by David. Quiet, polite, never causes trouble." Why? Dr. Martinez stared at the note, his medical training warring with the impossibility of what he was seeing. "This handwriting, it's not just similar to handwriting I've seen before, it's identical. The letter formation, the spacing, the way the words flow together, everything." "Identical to what?" "To notes written by my former psychiatrist, Dr. David Chen. He went missing 2 years ago after a car accident. His body was never found." Officer Chen felt ice forming in her stomach. "Doctor, what did this psychiatrist look like?" "Asian American and about 6 feet tall, soft-spoken. He had this way of seeing straight to the heart of what someone needed to hear." Dr. Martinez looked up, his eyes bright with an impossible hope. "Officer, I think the homeless man who found my wallet might be one of the most respected psychiatrists in New York City." 3 blocks away, David Chen was settling down for another night on his cardboard bed, staring up at the tunnel ceiling. In his pocket, the coffee cup with his mysterious words rustled softly every time he moved. Some memories returned like whispers, others like screams. Tonight, as the city hummed its lullaby around him, David's dreams would be different. Instead of the usual fragments, flashes of white coats, the sound of soft crying hands reaching for help he couldn't remember how to give, he would dream of a little girl who believed in purple elephants. He would dream of belonging somewhere. And in his sleep, he would whisper words that felt like coming home. The healing isn't linear, but it's always possible. When he woke tomorrow morning to begin day 848 of his forgotten life, David Chen would have no idea that his old world was about to collide with his new one in ways that would test everything he thought he knew about identity, family, and the price of remembering who you used to be. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. Some families find you when you need them most. And sometimes the person you're meant to become is hiding inside the person you've forgotten you used to be. The city never slept, but it dreamed. And in those dreams, lost souls found their way home through the kindness of strangers who might not be strangers at all. Detective Ray Morrison had been investigating missing persons cases for 15 years, long enough to know that hope was often the cruelest emotion in his line of work. It kept families searching when logic said to let go, and it blinded investigators to uncomfortable truths. But as he sat in his cluttered office at 8:47 a.m., staring at the file that had just landed on his desk, hope was exactly what he felt. The call from Officer Chen had come in 20 minutes ago. A homeless man, handwriting that matched a missing psychiatrist, a story that seemed too impossible to be true. Ray pulled up the missing persons report on his computer. Dr. David Michael Chen, age 43, chief of psychiatric services at Mount Sinai Hospital. Last seen leaving the hospital after his final shift on a rainy Tuesday evening in September 2 years ago. His car had been found wrapped around a tree on the FDR Drive airbag, deployed driver's door hanging open. But no body, no blood trail, no David Chen. The case had gone cold after 6 months of investigation. Car accident victims didn't just vanish into thin air, but sometimes the Hudson River claimed bodies that were never recovered. Sometimes families had to learn to live with questions that had no answers. Ray picked up his phone and dialed Dr. Martinez's number. "Doctor, this is Detective Morrison, NYPD Missing Persons. I understand you believe you've encountered Dr. David Chen." "Detective, I know how this sounds, but I'm certain. The handwriting is identical, not similar identical. And the content, it's exactly the kind of therapeutic insight Dr. Chen was known for. The man who wrote this note has advanced training in psychology. Where can I find this homeless individual?" "Times Square subway station, according to Officer Chen. Detective, if there's even a chance that David is alive, I'll be there within the hour." Ray hung up and reached for his coat. 15 years of chasing ghosts had taught him that most missing persons stayed missing for good reasons. But sometimes, just sometimes, the ghosts found their way home. 3 floors below the city streets, David Chen was experiencing the strangest morning of his recent memory. It had started when he'd woken from dreams filled with voices he almost recognized calling names he couldn't quite catch. The fragments were more vivid than usual. White coats, soft, lighting the weight of someone else's tears on his shoulders. "You're safe now. We're going to work through this together." The voice in the dream had been his own. He was certain of it. But speaking to whom about what? David folded his cardboard mattress with the same precise movements he'd performed 847 times before. But today, everything felt different. Hyper-real. As if the world had shifted slightly off its axis and he was the only one who noticed. "Morning, David." He looked up to see Officer Chen approaching with 2 coffee cups and a concerned expression. In 2 years of daily interactions, she'd never brought him coffee before. "Morning, Sarah. You're up early today." "I had some interesting calls last night, about you actually." She handed him a steaming cup, studying his face carefully. "David, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you remember anything about being a doctor?" The coffee cup slipped from David's fingers, hitting the concrete with a splash of brown liquid. The sound echoed through the station like a gunshot. "What did you say?" "The wallet you returned yesterday, the note you wrote. Dr. Martinez thinks you might be someone he used to know. Someone who went missing 2 years ago." David's vision blurred at the edges. Fragments of memory flashed like strobe lights, diplomas on walls, patients' faces streaked with tears, the satisfaction of helping someone find their way through darkness. Depression lies to us about our worth. Had he written those words before to other people in other places? I don't remember being a doctor. But sometimes I know things I shouldn't know. Medical things, psychological things. David's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sarah, what if I'm not who I think I am? What if you're exactly who you're supposed to be, but you just forgot for a while?" Before David could respond, footsteps echoed across the platform. A man in a rumpled suit was approaching, badge visible at his hip, followed by Dr. Martinez. David recognized the doctor from the photo in the wallet. Tired eyes, kind face, the posture of someone carrying invisible weight. Mr. David, Detective Morrison approached cautiously. I'm Detective Morrison, NYPD. I'd like to ask you a few questions if that's all right. David nodded, unable to trust his voice. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. I wanted to thank you for returning my wallet. And for the note, it meant more than you know. I'm glad it helped, David said softly. You look like someone who needed to be reminded that you matter. How did you know about the medication, about depression? David closed his eyes, trying to catch the memories that kept slipping away. Sometimes I just know things, about pain, about healing. It feels like remembering how to breathe, automatic, but I can't explain how I learned. Detective Morrison pulled out a manila folder. David, I'm going to show you some photographs. I want you to tell me if anything looks familiar. The first photo was a hospital ID badge, Dr. David Michael Chen, Mount Sinai Hospital, Chief of Psychiatric Services. The man in the photo had the same bone structure as David, the same careful eyes, but he was clean-shaven, well-dressed, confident, a stranger wearing David's face. I don't remember him, David said, but he looks like someone I might want to be. The second photo was an office diplomas on the wall, family photos on the desk bookshelves lined with psychology textbooks. David's hands began to shake. The blue chair, he whispered. What about it? Someone used to sit in the blue chair, a woman. She was afraid of something. David's voice grew stronger as the memory surfaced. She brought her daughter to one of our sessions. The little girl drew me a picture of a purple elephant. Dr. Martinez and Detective Morrison exchanged glances. David, Morrison said gently, one of your former patients was Sophia Martinez. She brought her daughter Lily to a session 3 years ago. Lily drew you a picture of a purple elephant. The world tilted sideways. David gripped the edge of the bench, feeling like he was falling even while sitting still. Sophia Martinez, he repeated. The woman from last night. Lily's mother. She was my patient. You helped her through a difficult divorce, gave her the strength to leave an abusive marriage and fight for custody of her daughter. David felt something fundamental shift inside his chest, like tectonic plates settling into new positions. Then last night when we met at the subway, wasn't the first time you'd helped her family, Morrison finished. David, what else do you remember? Closing his eyes, David let the fragments flow without trying to control them. White coats, soft voices, the smell of hospital disinfectant, someone crying and my voice saying, the healing isn't linear, but it's always possible. He opened his eyes looking directly at Dr. Martinez. You were my patient too, weren't you? For 8 months 3 years ago, you saved my life, David. When I was going through my divorce struggling with depression, you gave me hope when I thought there wasn't any left. What happened to me? Why don't I remember? Detective Morrison's expression darkened. We think someone wanted you to forget. Your car accident. We're reopening the investigation. There are some things that never added up. Meanwhile, 6 blocks uptown, Sophia Martinez sat in her corner office on the 32nd floor, staring out at the city skyline while her assistant Jennifer briefed her on the Peterson custody case. The husband's legal team filed a motion to dismiss all psychiatric evaluations from the record, Jennifer was saying. They're claiming bias in the selection of mental health professionals. What kind of bias? They're alleging that certain psychiatrists have an agenda in custody cases, that they're being coached to provide testimony that favors women regardless of the facts. Sophia's attention sharpened. Which psychiatrist specifically? Jennifer consulted her notes. David Chen is mentioned by name. Apparently, he testified in several high-profile custody cases over the past 5 years. The opposing counsel is claiming he had a pattern of recommending custody to female patients. The name hit Sophia like a physical blow. Dr. David Chen, the psychiatrist who had helped her find the courage to leave Richard 3 years ago. The same David Chen who had been declared missing after a car accident. The same name as the homeless man her daughter had befriended last night. Jennifer, I need you to pull all the files on Dr. David Chen, everything, his patient records, testimony, transcripts, the police report from his disappearance. And I need it within the hour. Mrs. Martinez's patient records are confidential. We can't. I was his patient. I can request my own records. Sophia was already reaching for her phone. And Jennifer, cancel my afternoon meetings. I have somewhere I need to be. As Jennifer left to execute the unusual request, Sophia stood at her window looking down at the city streets where millions of stories unfolded daily. Somewhere down there in the tunnels beneath the concrete and steel, a man named David was discovering that his past had been stolen from him. A man who had given her the strength to fight for her daughter was now fighting to remember who he used to be. The intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Martinez, your ex-husband is online too. He says it's urgent." Sophia hesitated. Richard Martinez had impeccable timing. He always appeared when she was dealing with something complicated, as if he had radar for her vulnerable moments. But today, for the first time in 3 years, she found herself curious about what he wanted. "Put him through." "Sophia." Richard's voice carried its familiar mixture of charm and authority. "I heard about your new friend." Ice flooded Sophia's veins. "What are you talking about?" "The homeless man Lily met at the subway station." "David, isn't it?" "Richard, if you're having me or Lily followed." "I'm not having you followed, Sophia. I'm having him investigated. And what I found is interesting." "What do you mean?" "I mean David Chen, and yes, I know his full name, isn't just some random homeless person. He's Dr. David Chen, the psychiatrist, who testified against me in our custody hearing 3 years ago." Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. "That's impossible." "Is it? Think about it, Sophia. What are the odds that you would randomly encounter the very therapist who helped you divorce me? The man who convinced you that you deserve better than what I was offering? You're suggesting this was planned somehow. I'm suggesting there's more to this story than either of us knows. And until we figure out what it is, I don't want our daughter anywhere near him." Before Sophia could respond, her other line rang. Jennifer's voice came through the intercom. "Mrs. Martinez, Detective Morrison from NYPD Missing Persons is here. He says he needs to speak with you about Dr. David Chen." The coincidences were piling up too fast to be coincidences anymore. "Richard, I have to go, but this conversation isn't over." "No, it's not. Sophia, be careful. If David Chen has been pretending to be homeless for 2 years, there's a reason, and reasons like that are usually dangerous." As Detective Morrison entered her office, Sophia realized that the simple act of kindness she'd witnessed the night before, a homeless man comforting her daughter, was actually the first thread in a tapestry of deception that someone had spent 2 years weaving. The question was whether David was the spider or just another fly caught in the web. "Mrs. Martinez," Detective Morrison said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I understand you encountered Dr. David Chen last night at Times Square subway station." "I encountered a homeless man named David. Are you telling me he's actually Dr. Chen?" "That's what we're trying to determine. He's suffering from what appears to be retrograde amnesia, complete memory loss about his life before the accident. But his behavior, his knowledge, his instincts, they all point to his original identity. Detective, 3 years ago, Dr. Chen was my therapist. He helped me through my divorce. If the man I met last night is really him, wouldn't I have recognized him? Would you look at these photos?" Morrison spread before her a series of pictures. Dr. Chen, in his hospital whites, confident and professional, crime scene photos from the accident site, and finally a grainy security camera image of a man in ragged clothes weathered by months of living rough. The transformation was shocking. The same bone structure, the same gentle eyes, but completely different contexts. The mind, Sophia realized, saw what it expected to see. "My God," she whispered. "It really is him." "Mrs. Martinez, we believe Dr. Chen's accident wasn't accidental. Someone wanted him gone, and when he survived, they made sure he couldn't remember why he was targeted. Who would want to hurt him? That's what we're trying to figure out. But I think the Peterson case you're working on might be connected. Dr. Chen testified in a lot of custody cases, and someone has been systematically discrediting his testimony." Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your friend David is in danger. If you want to keep your daughter safe, stay away from the subway station. Some memories are better left buried." Detective Morrison saw her face pale. "What is it?" Sophia showed him the message. "Someone doesn't want David to remember who he is. Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to assign a protection detail to you and your daughter. Until we know who's behind this, you are both potential targets." Detective, there's something else you should know. The Peterson case, the opposing counsel specifically mentioned Dr. Chen in their motion to dismiss psychiatric testimony. They're claiming he had a bias in custody cases. Morrison's expression grew grim. What kind of bias? They're saying he systematically recommended custody to female patients regardless of the facts. But that's not true. David never testified based on gender. He testified based on the best interests of the children involved. Someone's been building a case against him for years, Morrison realized, discrediting his professional reputation, making him look biased or corrupt. When that didn't work, they tried to kill him, Sophia finished, and when he survived, they made sure he couldn't testify against anyone ever again. Morrison's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then hung up with a worried expression. Mrs. Martinez, we have a problem. David Chen has disappeared from the subway station, and Dr. Martinez just found a note that suggests he might be trying to remember everything on his own. David Chen stood in the archives of the New York Public Library at 42nd Street, surrounded by towers of newspapers and legal documents chasing memories that felt like smoke. The note he'd left for Dr. Martinez had been simple. Gone to find the truth. If something happens to me, tell Sophia and Lily that being their elephant family was the best thing I couldn't remember. For 6 hours, he'd been piecing together fragments of his former life through public records, news articles, and court documents. The picture that emerged was both familiar and terrifying. Dr. David Michael Chen graduated summa cum laude from Columbia Medical School, served 2 tours as a military psychiatrist in Afghanistan, specialized in trauma therapy and family counseling. His testimony had been sought in dozens of high-profile custody cases over the past decade. But it was the pattern in those cases that made David's blood run cold. Every family he'd helped, every mother he'd testified for, every child he'd fought to protect, had been targeted afterward. Harassment campaigns, financial sabotage. In 3 cases, mysterious accidents that left families traumatized but alive, always just alive, enough to serve as warnings to others. And at the center of it all was a name that appeared in legal filings again and again, Meridian Consulting Group. Reputation management for high-net-worth individuals, according to their corporate website. But the deeper David dug, the more sinister their methods became. They didn't just manage reputations, they destroyed inconvenient people who threatened their clients' interests. David's hands shook as he read the final document, a private investigator's report dated 1 week before his accident. Someone had been building a dossier on him, documenting his daily routines, his security habits, his route home from the hospital. The last entry was chilling in its simplicity. Subject leaves hospital parking garage every Tuesday at 9:47 p.m. Takes FDR Drive north to 96th Street exit. Recommend intervention during rain for maximum plausible deniability. Maximum plausible deniability. They had planned his accident down to the weather conditions. David felt rage building in his chest. Not the confused frustration he'd lived with for 2 years, but clean, focused anger. These people had stolen his life, his identity, his ability to help the families who needed him most. They had tried to erase him from existence, and when that failed, they had trapped him in a prison of amnesia. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had let him live. His phone, a prepaid cell he'd bought that morning with money from returning bottles and cans, buzzed with a text from Detective Morrison. "David, where are you? Sophia and Lily are safe, but Meridian knows you're investigating. Don't try to handle this alone." Well, David typed back, not handling it alone, about to give them exactly what they've been afraid of for 2 years. Someone who remembers everything. Before Morrison could respond, David turned off the phone and walked deeper into the library's archives. He had one more stop to make before the final confrontation. The microfiche records of the Columbia Daily Spectator went back 20 years. It took David 40 minutes to find what he was looking for, a small article from his medical school days about a student who had volunteered to counsel families affected by domestic violence. The photo showed a younger version of himself standing next to a group of children, all holding drawings they'd made during art therapy sessions. In the front row, a little boy held up a crayon drawing of a purple elephant. "Purple elephants never forget," the caption read. Medical student David Chen helps young trauma survivors process their experiences through art and storytelling. David stared at the photo, feeling the last pieces of his identity click into place. He hadn't just been a psychiatrist who happened to help custody cases. He had dedicated his entire career to protecting children from the kind of systematic abuse that Meridian Consulting enabled. No wonder they had wanted him gone. His phone buzzed again, this time with a call from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, David answered. Dr. Chen, the voice was female, professional, cold. My name is Claire Blackstone. I represent Meridian Consulting Group. I believe we have something to discuss. I'm listening. You've been asking questions about your accident, digging into matters that are better left buried. That shows admirable determination but poor judgment. What do you want? A meeting. Tonight, March 10 p.m., Central Park Boathouse. Come alone and we can discuss a resolution that benefits everyone involved. And if I don't, then we'll be forced to remind you why you disappeared in the first place. Only this time we'll include your new friends in the lesson. Sophia Martinez has such a lovely apartment. Lily draws such beautiful pictures. The line went dead. David stared at the phone, feeling ice and fire warring in his chest. They were threatening Sophia and Lily. The family he'd found when he'd lost everything else. The family who had shown him what it meant to belong somewhere, even when he couldn't remember his own name. He thought about calling Detective Morrison, about waiting for backup, about doing the smart, safe thing. Instead, he walked to the library's computer terminal and began typing an email to every major news outlet in New York City. The subject line read, "The Meridian Files: How a Corporate Conspiracy Stole My Life and Endangered Countless Families." He attached every document he'd found, every connection he'd traced, every piece of evidence that proved Meridian's systematic campaign of intimidation and violence. Then he set the email to send automatically at 11 p.m., 1 hour after his meeting with Claire Blackstone. If Meridian wanted to play games with people's lives, David would make sure the entire city knew the rules. Central Park at 10 p.m. was a landscape of shadows and whispered secrets. David approached the boathouse from the south, his footsteps muffled by fallen leaves. 2 years of living on the streets had taught him how to move unseen, how to read the intentions of predators, how to survive in a world that wanted to forget he existed. Tonight, those skills might save his life. Claire Blackstone was waiting on the dock, her blonde hair catching the moonlight, her expensive coat a stark contrast to the rough wooden planks. She was younger than her voice had suggested, maybe 35, with the kind of beauty that was used as a weapon. Dr. Chen, thank you for coming. Let's get this over with. What do you want? What I've always wanted: for you to stop interfering in matters that don't concern you. Claire stepped closer, her heels clicking on the dock. You've already caused enough damage. The families you helped 3 years ago are still dealing with the consequences of your testimony. You mean they're still dealing with your harassment, Ed? I mean they learned that there are prices to pay for making powerful people unhappy. Just like you did. David felt the familiar calm that had once served him in war zones settle over his mind. Tell me about the accident. What accident? Claire's smile was winter sharp. You mean your unfortunate decision to drive drunk on a rainy night? Tragic, really. A respected doctor throwing his life away because he couldn't handle the pressure of his job. Except I wasn't drunk, and it wasn't an accident. Can you prove that, doctor, with your condition? I doubt anyone would take your word over official police reports. David reached into his jacket and pulled out a small digital recorder. You mean these official police reports? He pressed play, and Claire's voice filled the night air. We made sure he couldn't remember why he was targeted. Claire's composure cracked for the first time. You've been recording this conversation. Every word, along with the detailed confession you're about to give me about Meridian's operations, your client list, and exactly how many families you've destroyed over the past 5 years. I'm not confessing anything. The sound of footsteps on the path behind them made both David and Claire turn. Detective Morrison emerged from the shadows, followed by Agent Sarah Kim from the FBI and a team of federal agents. Claire Blackstone, Agent Kim announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. As the agents moved to surround Claire, she looked at David with something between rage and grudging respect. This isn't over, doctor. Meridian has clients who won't let this stand. You may have won tonight, but nothing, David interrupted. At 11 p.m. tonight, every major news outlet in the city will receive a complete dossier on Meridian's activities. By tomorrow morning, your entire operation will be front-page news. Your clients can threaten me all they want, but they can't threaten the entire free press. Agent Kim smiled as she secured the handcuffs. Mr. Blackstone, you have excellent timing. We've been building a RICO case against Meridian for 18 months. Dr. Chen's evidence is exactly what we needed to bring down the entire network. As Claire was led away, Detective Morrison approached David. How long have you been planning this? Since about 2 p.m. this afternoon, when I realized that Meridian's biggest weakness was their arrogance. They never considered that a homeless man with amnesia might be more dangerous than a respected psychiatrist with something to lose. And if we hadn't been able to track you down in time, David smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. Then you would have found a very detailed confession from Claire Blackstone, because I recorded everything from the moment she called me. Turns out 2 years of having nothing made you very good at planning for contingencies. Morrison's radio crackled. All units, Sophia and Lily Martinez, are secure. Repeat, the family is safe and en route to the precinct. David felt tension he'd been carrying for hours finally release. They're okay. More than okay, Sophia's been coordinating with our task force all day. Turns out your former patient was almost as good at strategic planning as you are. 20 minutes later, David stood in the precinct's family room, still wearing clothes that marked him as someone society had forgotten, waiting to see the people who had helped him remember who he was supposed to be. The door opened, and Lily Martinez ran into the room like a small hurricane, her purple backpack bouncing as she launched herself into David's arms. David, Mom told me you're really a doctor who helps people feel better when they're sad. Something like that, David said, kneeling to her level. But more importantly, I'm someone who learned what families really mean from a very wise little girl who believes in purple elephants. Sophia entered more slowly, her professional composure barely containing the emotions underneath. David, do you remember everything now? Most of it, the important parts. He stood, Lily's hand still clasped in his. I remember being your therapist 3 years ago. I remember helping you find the courage to leave Richard and fight for Lily. But what I remember most clearly is sitting in a subway station 2 nights ago, sharing a sandwich with your daughter, and feeling like I belonged somewhere for the first time in 2 years. So what happens now? Sophia asked. Do you go back to your old life, your practice, your apartment? Everything you had before, Woodton. David was quiet for a long moment, looking at Lily's trusting face, then at Sophia's careful hope. I've been thinking about that. The person I was before the accident. He was good at his job, but he was also alone, isolated. He lived for his work because he didn't have anything else. David paused, choosing his words carefully. These past 2 days with you and Lily, I've remembered what it feels like to be part of a family. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe losing everything was the only way I could find what really mattered. I want to go back to helping people, but I want to do it as someone who understands what it means to be lost and what it means to be found. Lily tugged on his hand. Does that mean you want to be our family for real? Not just for today. David looked at Sophia, seeing in her eyes the same hope he felt in his own heart. If your mom thinks that's a good idea. I think, Sophia said softly, that we've all learned something about families that choose each other. And I think purple elephants would approve of the choice we're making. 6 months later, David Chen stood in his new office, smaller than his old one, located in a community health center in Queens rather than a prestigious Manhattan hospital. The walls were covered with drawings from young patients, including several purple elephants in positions of honor. His first patient of the day was a 7-year-old boy whose parents were going through a difficult divorce. The child sat in the blue chair. David had specifically requested a blue chair for his new office, clutching a stuffed animal and looking scared. Hi, Marcus, David said gently. I'm Dr. Chen. I heard you might want to talk to someone about some big changes happening in your family. My mom and dad fight all the time, Marcus whispered. They say it's not my fault, but maybe if I was better. Marcus, I want to tell you something important about families, David said, settling into his own chair. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt even when they love you very much. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means they're human, and humans sometimes struggle with hard things. How do you know? Because I spent some time learning about what it means to lose your family and what it means to find a new one. Can you tell me about the people who make you feel safe? As Marcus began to talk, David felt the familiar satisfaction of meaningful work. Outside his office window, he could see the subway station where Sophia caught the train to her new job as a family rights advocate. In the afternoon, Lily would come here to do her homework in the waiting room, often helping younger children with art projects while they waited for their appointments. It wasn't the life David Chen had planned, but it was the life he had chosen. A life where broken families could find healing, where lost children could discover their worth, and where a man who had forgotten everything could remember what truly mattered. Some stories David had learned weren't about returning to where you started. They were about discovering that home was never a place at all. It was the people who saw you at your worst and chose to love you anyway. And sometimes the most beautiful stories began with losing everything, so you could find the only things that really mattered in the end. The end. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to lose something important to discover what truly mattered? Have you experienced the power of chosen family? Let me know. Your stories inspire me to keep sharing tales of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary connections that make us human. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about second chances, unexpected families, and the incredible strength we find when we're brave enough to be vulnerable. Until next time, remember you are someone's elephant family, and they are yours.